Congressman Roy, I really appreciate your time this morning. Thanks for joining us. I know you're busy these last few days of the campaign. Um, so, last day of early voting today, election day, obviously on Tuesday for this runoff. Where do you think this race stands right now?
Well, look, I'm obviously coming to you from Washington, D.C. I got called back to vote to deal with trying to get ICE and Border Patrol funded. Unfortunately, the Senate didn't send it to us yesterday. So I literally flew up here. Now I got to fly back. But we feel good about the race where we see numbers moving. They've moved in a very good direction. And we've been able to match my opponent who spent so much of his own inherited money in the March primary and ran a bunch of negative ads against me. And I ran all positive ads. So we adjusted our strategy a little bit in the runoff, made sure we were able to get funding to match and make sure we're able to run some ads that showed the very clear distinction between me and my opponent. And the reaction has been very favorable. It turns out the people of Texas want to have someone who's a proven lawyer, a federal prosecutor, the former first assistant attorney general, rather than someone who's literally never been in a courtroom and would need on-the-job training. And that message is resonating across the state of Texas.
So, I wanted to ask you, and you touched on some of it there. Why do you believe Republicans should pick you over your opponent, Mays Middleton?
Yeah, the biggest reason is experience. And look, we can barb about issues, but the main thing is you need someone who's actually been there, who's run complex litigation, who stood before a judge, who's barred in the Eastern District, the Fifth Circuit, the U.S. Supreme Court. My opponent is not barred in any of those courts. He's never been in the courtroom. He's never practiced law in a meaningful way. He's basically managed his family's money and inheritance and oil and gas royalties. And I don't begrudge that, but that's not a credential to be the Attorney General of the state of Texas. This is not a stepping stone to be governor. This is not a place where you're supposed to take your family money and try to buy the offices. I think it needs to be earned. And look, people can agree or disagree with each of us on different positions. But at the end of the day, you want somebody who's a trained lawyer to be the Attorney General of the state of Texas. I could talk about other differences, but that's the main thing that we're talking about across the state.
I read some of your remarks you made at an event, I think last week or just a few days ago, where you went as far as saying that you don't believe, you wouldn't even hire him to work in the office, let alone lead it. Could you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, and I always try to be a little careful. I'm not trying to be dismissive. I mean, I've known Mays a long time, and we have historically gotten along well. But if I'm looking at resumes, I just would not hire somebody with his lack of experience. I mean, he graduated law school, I think, I don't know, almost 20 years ago, and has never really practiced law. I don't even know what I would hire him for in the office of Attorney General. And you know what? I know how that job works because I was the first assistant. I hired up the leadership of that office. I hired Jim Davis to head up civil litigation, who's now the president of the University of Texas. I hired Brantley Starr, who's now a federal judge appointed by Trump in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I hired Bernie McNamee, who was a FERC commissioner appointed by Trump. I built an all-star team. Mays wouldn't make that cut. And I think it matters who's in the office on day one to be the attorney general.
Congressman, you came in second in the primary, about 7 points behind Middleton. So what do you have to do? What have you been doing to turn this around and come on top in the runoff?
I mean, the answer is pretty simple, which is have the resources and the money to make sure my message gets out. I was outspent 4-1 in the first primary, and that is not the case this time. So now it's a fair fight. And when the people of Texas hear the message and it's equal time or I'm able to beat them on time, then lo and behold, people start moving in my direction. The formula is not complex in politics. You got to get your message in front of people. When we do, we win.
Do you think it was a mistake in retrospect to stay positive early on and not attack as quickly as, he did your way?
Look, you can always Monday morning quarterback. Look, I'm proud of the campaign we've run. I wanted it to be a positive campaign. Look, I might go back and punch him a little bit more in the first primary and keep those numbers down. But really, it was a resource issue. We ran a very strong campaign. We raised a good amount of money by historic terms for an attorney general race, and married up with some of the money I had in my federal account, and we ran ads, and by any measure, we ran as much as any AG race in history. But my opponent, who could self-fund, outspent us 3-1, 4-1. So we've changed that formula this time, and we think that's going to make the difference.
What are your priorities on day one if elected to this office?
The first thing you've got to do is make sure you've got the best lawyers and the biggest law firm in the state. As I mentioned before, I've done that before. I've hired up talent before. I'm already getting people who've reached out who would love to work with me. And so we're trying to, not look too far down the field. We want to win this race, but you got to build the team. You got to make sure that the blocking and tackling is being done, child support, open records division, So you have transparency in government for you guys in the media, as well as activists and local Texans who want to get information from their local governments. Those are important functions that don't make headlines. But let's be honest, we also need to deal with the headline issues. Crime is rampant in Houston. It's rampant in Austin, San Antonio, where I am a congressman in that area, uh, Dallas as well. And we got to deal with it. We cannot have DAs putting criminals back out on the streets. Crime Stoppers in Houston, they told me that 220 Houstonians have been murdered over the last 6 years by people who have already been in and out and in and out, recidivists. And I think that's just more than unacceptable. It's appalling, and it's something we can change if you have a strong attorney general. You got to deal with border, you got to deal with illegal aliens, you got to deal with the issue of Islam, these massive Islamic centers and mosques that are going up all over the state of Texas. People say, Chip, what about the First Amendment? Yeah, but I'm talking about a political ideology in which language is out there and publicly available to wage jihad on the West and try to fight and go against our Christian principles and our Judeo-Christian founding principles. So you need an attorney general who's been there, been in the trenches, can do it. Chairman of the subcommittee of the Constitution on the House Judiciary Committee. I understand these issues. I'm ready on day one to do all those things.
The man you're trying to succeed, Ken Paxton, turned this office into a very powerful office, one would argue. Is there anything you think Paxton got wrong during his time there that you would do differently if you take over the job?
Well, look, I would carry forward the legacy of, Greg Abbott did a lot of good stuff in the AG's office. Ken Paxton has done a lot of great things and going after and big corporations, Google, for example, getting $1.5 billion settlement trying to protect our kids. He's done a good job going after some of the big healthcare insurance hospitals that are, buying up local and regional hospitals. I'd like to carry that stuff forward, going after Medicaid fraud, et cetera. But I do think, and I mentioned it before, you got to, I think, improve our open records division. We've got to have greater transparency, quicker turnarounds, and reliable decision making out of that office. And child support, I hear lots of stories from around the state where what we're doing in terms of our customer service and support is not where it needs to be, and we need some attention in that area. Again, those aren't sexy; they don't get headlines, but they're 2,600 of the 4,100 employees at the Office of Attorney General and child support. The Open Records Division is kind of the, last stand if you're a Texan who wants to get information from your local government. Let's say a data center is going in and you want to know the impact on water or grid, power, et cetera. Say you want to know what's happening with crime. Hey, why are certain criminals on the streets and so forth? And you're filing public information requests. You have a right to get that information, and we need to be better at that. So those are some things that would be different, but we need to carry forward, continuing to push back on the bureaucracy in Washington and corporate America that are too often overrunning the people of Texas.
When I talked to your opponent a few days ago, I asked him what his priorities would be. He listed off a few, but he summed it up as saying that the focus, his number one priority, is defeating the left. And anyone who is on the left who questions the conservative movement is the so-called enemy. So I want to ask you this. A lot of Texans, as you well know, as in your position as a congressman, they don't care about these political fights. They care about crime. They care about scams. They care about fentanyl coming into the country, killing our loved ones. They care about property taxes. So how do you in the AG's office, how does a Roy Attorney General make their lives better?
Well, the Office of the Attorney General is the lawyer for the people of Texas. That's the way I view it. And that means all Texans. And you got to figure out how you're going to serve as the lawyer to defend the people, make sure that DAs are doing their job, keep criminals off the streets, secure the border of Texas, stop fentanyl, all of the things that are endangering the people of Texas, but also representing them against corporate interests and big government interests. And sometimes those intersect. And you need an attorney general who's focused on them, on the people, not the swamp in Austin. My opponent is very much a creature of the swamp in Austin. And he likes to make snide comments about my being a congressman and being in DC, and that I'm retreating to Texas. I've heard him use that phrase. Look, I've been on the front lines fighting for Texas and Washington. I believe I'm the right guy to be attorney general to challenge the swamp in Austin, which is every bit as big as the swamp in DC. One party rule. Look, I'm a strong conservative and I'm an unapologetic Republican, but one party rule can also be a corrupting influence in terms of your willingness to look in the mirror and to make sure you deliver. Property taxes are too high. You can't just go pat yourself on the back saying we did something on property taxes when elderly Texans still pay rent to the state of Texas. You can't say that you've done enough on Sharia law and that you've banned it when it's still a major problem in Epic City and other places in the state of Texas. You can't say that you're doing enough on the crime when DAs and judges are still putting criminals on the streets or on the border. You can't just say, well, I'm glad Trump's here doing doing it. And then the next time you've got open borders and fentanyl pouring into our communities, we just kind of shrug it off and say that's a federal problem. That's not how I work. I think the Austin swamp is a little nervous that Chip Roy would be coming to Austin. That's part of the reason why I think I'm getting a little blowback from some of the people that have had a stranglehold on that town for a long time. And they're a little nervous. And I'm glad. I'm glad they're a little nervous. That's part of the political process. Shake it up and let's see what the people want.
A couple more questions for you, Congressman. I want to talk about the attacks that have been coming your way on
Mhm.
these airwaves. They've been pretty relentless. Mays Middleton saying that he is the true MAGA conservative, going as far as branding himself as, MAGA Mays. He's been hitting you hard, painting you as a backstabber, saying you betrayed President Trump, that you're not MAGA enough. You just rattled off your conservative credentials. I don't think anyone would question those, but my question to you, what's your response to those attacks? Are you MAGA enough?
Yeah, my opponent is again trying to use his trust fund to buy a brand, right? But you have to earn the respect of the people and earn the respect of the president. I've got a great relationship with the president. The ad that I'm running right now, I say it pretty bluntly. Yes, I drive a hard bargain. There's a reason the president said when I was in Kerrville with him after the tragic floods, hey, Chip isn't easy, but he's good. Good. Like that's the best compliment you can give me. This is from the president that is known for the art of the deal. Like I do drive a hard bargain. I'm supposed to. My opponent wants to turn that into a negative. I view it as a positive, and I promise you the people of Texas do too when they see the facts. I've got the literal number one vote highest score in terms of America First scoring of any member of Congress. Nobody can debate my conservative or America First credentials in terms of my voting. I led the charge to get the big beautiful bill in the right place, so much so on the green new scam subsidies that a California PAC has spent almost $2 million against me in a Texas primary because they fear me as Attorney General. Look, I don't deal in political brands. What I try to deal with is on the Constitution, limited government, standing alongside the president the 99% of the time I agree with him. And then, yes, using my constitutionally prescribed role to challenge the times I disagree with the president or my colleagues on Capitol Hill. I'm supposed to do that, and you want that. And unfortunately, my opponent would be too quick and happy to be a puppet in Austin. And Austin doesn't need a puppet. Austin needs somebody who's going to be a change agent.
We've seen what a Trump endorsement can do. We saw it in the news with the Paxton endorsement just a few days ago. In that Truth Social post, the president sort of talked about why he wasn't supporting John Cornyn. It wasn't a matter of his politics, but he perceived him as maybe disloyal during times when he says he needed support. We know the president doesn't forget, has a long memory when he perceives someone as being disloyal to him for whatever reason that may be. So my question to you is, have you sought out a Trump endorsement? Do you think that would be beneficial? And are you concerned one may come or may not come in time?
Well, obviously, today's Friday. We got early voting is the last day of early voting is today, and then the election's on Tuesday. I've had a lot of great conversations with the president. He asked me about my race whenever we talk. We get along great. We're in so much agreement on so many different issues. And look, my view on this is pretty simple. Look at my record and look what I've done, and how that aligns with what the president wants to accomplish and how effective my record has been in delivering. The president knows that. I would also note the president is someone who wants to see how you're joining his team and working with him. Take JD Vance. Why don't you go find, I don't mean this pointedly to you, for those who are critics, go look at the quotes that JD Vance had about President Trump. Go look at the quotes that Marco Rubio had about President Trump. Now, those are two of his most fierce advocates in his administration as vice president and secretary of state. And, that's politics. John Adams and Jefferson, they were sparring. And then on July 4th, 1826, 200 years ago, Adams died saying Jefferson lives with the respect the two had for each other. As it turned out, fate would have it, Jefferson had died that morning. Politics is not for the thin skinned. Politics is not for the faint of heart. Politics is for those who want to lead the country and are willing to put their name out there and go win votes. I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to have honest conversations with the president, honest conversations with my colleagues. And as attorney general, I will have honest conversations with the governor, the lieutenant governor, the legislature, and all of the bureaucrats in Austin, because that's my job.
Last question for you, Congressman. In that last UH hobby poll, it shows a bit of a distance between you and Middleton. That's the only really public poll that we've seen. But I don't want to talk about that gap, but I want to talk about that 13% that remains undecided according to that poll. 13%, a pretty big swath of voters that could prove decisive. I would assume there are many undecided voters that are still out there. What is your message, your closing message to those undecided Republicans in Texas who haven't cast their ballots and are still trying to figure out if it's going to be Roy or Middleton?
Yeah, that one poll is about 4 weeks old, and I know you're not litigating that poll, but it was a text poll. I'm not sure that data is exactly accurate. I've seen a whole lot of polls running statewide. We feel very good about the direction where we're headed. And in terms of winning over the more undecided voters, we're doing very well with them because we're taking our message this time with equal footing in terms of our dollars. And when they hear the message and they hear, one, this is a guy who is a proven conservative, who's got a track record I can look at, and it's pretty unassailable. He has stood alongside the president, but he's been an independent minded voice in defense of the Constitution and the people of Texas, and has stood up when he needs to, and then figured out a way to reach an agreement and reach a deal. And then ultimately, he's an actual lawyer. He's been in court. He's done the job. He's been the first assistant attorney general. He's hired people. He's had to build a legal team. And importantly, he stood before a judge and he's argued. That's who you want as your attorney general. When I say that to people on the stump and I interact with them, I've had hardly anybody I haven't won over when I've been able to work with them and deliver the message one to one. In a state of 31 billion people, where maybe a little over a million are going to decide who the Republican nominee is, you got to do a mix of ads and text messages and, media and getting your message out and going and visiting them and shaking hands. And we've been doing all of it. And then it's up to the people of Texas and up to God. And I trust both of those to make a good decision.
All right, Congressman, I really appreciate your time.